In our postmodern age of division, anger, anxiety, and confusion, the most dangerous weapon you have is your own mind.
Take control! Question everything!
This is the Intellectual Freedom Podcast.
Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. And weak men, well, weak men create what we are living through right now. Internalize the statement for me. Hard times create strong men or women. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men or women. And weak men, well, weak men create what we are living through right now. Today, Plato predicts a headline of 2026 and beyond with such terrifying accuracy that it's going to make you want to scrub your curated algorithms and clean and throw your phone in the ocean. Welcome back to the Intellectual Freedom Podcast. I am Dr. David Hopkins, humanities professor and your host and guide through Plato. Plato and the Republic, the greatest book ever written in the history of Western civilization, a foundational, seminal work. And after today, we will be through 80% of this book. And for those of you following along, it hasn't been easy, has it? It is a challenging book, but that's a good thing. And right now, where we're at is a pretty dark moment, actually, in the book. We've been building up this perfect city, this perfect society, this place we could, in theory, have a true city of truth and justice. Well, today, after so many twists and turns, sadly today, we're going to be talking about the end times of this city. The moment when we will watch the city burn. But again, welcome back. Or if you are new, welcome for the first time. So glad you're here. Now, you can, if you're brand new, go back, listen up through all the episodes to get back to this place. Or if you want, heck, just listen into the end time stuff from Plato's perspective, that is, not my perspective, Plato in the book. And, well, if that's where you want, you're in exactly the right place. So a quick recap for us. Book 7, which we did last week, my favorite book in all the Republic. We took on the allegory of the cage. We stood on the mountaintop, actually, and we dragged the prisoner, if you remember, out of the cave. He looked up at the sun. He saw the good, the true, the beautiful, the real. It was that red pill moment. It was the peak of human potential. But here's a brutal law of the universe. What goes up must ultimately come down. Yeah, I know I'm not being super profound here, but it's true. It's true. Things don't just stay good or bad forever, right? I mean, if you've ever lived any amount of time on this planet, you know we go through phases. And so today, Plato takes on the phases, not of an individual life, but the life of a city or the life of a country, the life of an entire civilization. And so today we take on book number 8. And if book 7 was the story of the ascent, book 8 is the story of the crash. This is the disaster movie chapter. This is the time-lapse footage of a perfect civilization rotting from the inside out. And honestly, this is the most terrifying chapter for a modern listener because probably, well, almost certainly, we, my friends, you and I, are on the end phase of the most recent cycle that civilizations go through. Now, I'm not some doomer believing next week it all comes crashing down. But hey, we are going to look at things. And I hope at the end of this, you can look at us meaning our world, in an entirely different life. Because when Socrates describes how a free, wealthy, democratic society ultimately commits suicide, that society in essence has really this parasite, this parasitic mind virus, and it ultimately does kill the host. So he isn't just describing ancient Greece anymore. He describes us, you and I, in our world today, right now. Plato, as you read through Book 8, predicts with terrifying accuracy how freedom turns into chaos and how chaos opens the door for a tyrant. So a quick recap to this stage. In the previous books, we built the aristocracy, the rule of the best. We had the philosopher kings that could balance intellect and reason. They were ruling. We had guardians. Remember our guardians. They were protecting us. We had the producers that were providing everything that was needed for the cities. It was a perfect hierarchy, really. I mean, in theory, we talked about all the nuances of each one of these things, but we had order, we had discipline, we had truth. But Socrates warns us. He says, look, quote, everything that is born must decay, end quote. And he essentially predicts what's known as the Strauss-Howe generational theory. You might have heard the term the fourth turning. He argues that regimes don't change because of war. They don't change because of invasion. They change because of fathers and sons. The son looks at the father's life and rejects it. This on the surface, you might think, sounds like a crazy oversimplification. Well, it isn't. Not by a long shot. This slide, this decay, it happens. And it happens over a period of 4 unique and different stages. And once it starts, you can't stop gravity. But before we dive into the book, I feel like we need to zoom out just a second. We just talked about Plato predicting that everything is born must decay. Sure thing. I mean, I get that. Heck, I know my body biologically is decaying as I get older. I'm slower. I'm stiffer. Lots of days have way less energy. I'm heavier. Stuff hurts now that I didn't even know I had. I get the biology, the biological thing of everything decays and dies. But what Plato is talking about is something different. That societies decay in an identical way. And there's markers of this happening, and they do it and have always done it since the beginning of time. So I have bad news, and then I have more bad news. Which do you want first? Okay, let's just start with the bad news. In a 4-season cycle, spring, summer, fall, and winter, the bad news right now, winter is here. The badder news, or the more bad news, or the worse news, whatever you like better for your grammatical, it's right on schedule. And there isn't anything we can do about it. You know me, I'm not naturally the super downer guy, but if we follow through on Plato's logic and also the Strauss-Howe generational theory, winter is here. We are in winter right now, my friends. We are in winter. And the collapse is ultimately inevitable, right? Ouch, that kind of stings a little bit. There is this theory, and once you see it and understand it, again, the Strauss-Howe generational theory, look it up, Google it, you can read about it all you want to read about it, but it's hard to unsee it after you see it, and it really is a red pill of history. So how does this go? So you and I have been trained almost since birth, ever since we went to school, that history is a straight line. But in fact, the core idea of this is that history is not a straight line. We're taught in school that history is just progress, progress, progress. We get smarter, we get richer, we get freer, forever and ever. Tech bros tell us this all the time. Yes, of course, progress, amazing. Look at all the new great technology. The world, in many ways, you can easily create an argument that the world is better and it's brighter, and we're getting to be incredible human beings because of progress. Yeah, that in one sense is true, and it sounds super fluffy nice, right? But is it factually true? Are we as human beings and society, with all this amazing technology, do we live better? Are we happier? Are we less stressed? Think about that. Because Plato would say, wrong. The Strauss-Howe generational theory would say, wrong. Instead, their argument would be that history is not a straight line, it's a circle. It's seasonal. It's that seasonal cycle, just like the nature, spring, summer, fall, and winter. Civilization has 4, as the theory states, turnings. And here is the burning question. And you may be thinking about it. Well, how long does the entire cycle take? I mean, if you're up north and you're in a climate where you get all 4 seasons, it's just a 1-year thing, right? 365 days, you get to see all 4 turnings happen. But what about this, the civilization-wide turning? Well, the entire cycle takes between 80 to 100 years. And guess what? We're at the end of the tape. Theoretically, if the theory holds true, the quote-unquote end of our current cycle would be between today, 2026, up to 2046-ish. So yeah, this theory right now that we're in the final stage of the turning is slapping us in the face right now. But before you go out and stock up on food, water, guns, ammo, I want to say a couple things. So take the Roman Empire, for example. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Don't have the exact number sitting smack in front of me right now as we're talking. But you can imagine if you are a Roman historian and you evaluate the Roman timeline, you will see multiple turnings. And so that's not to say that our current turning, which is we're in the end stages of the 4th one, does that mean that the United States of America will collapse completely and we're going to have a brand new flag? The entire thing is completely gone? No. But what it does mean is that we are on the end stages of what we have been building for roughly 80 to 100 years. What does that mean, though? Could it mean a global nuclear war? Could it mean a catastrophic collapse in The financial system, could it mean a meteor strikes and blows it down? Could it mean that some way we have a dictator infuse our democracy and destroys the Constitution? I mean, I don't know what it looks like. You don't know what it looks like. There's that part I'm not going to go into. But the fact tends to hold in this theory that every 80 to 100 years, powerful large civilizations or small civilizations go through a turning. And so let's talk about these turnings. And first we'll do it in our current context. So turning number one, the spring. The vibe, what's going on? Unity. Institutions are strong. Individualism is weak. We've been talking about that, haven't we? In the Republic, and how Socrates has been arguing for the need to deflect individualism for the collective good. Our example, you could say our latest season, the first spring, the latest spring for us, 1946 to roughly 1964. And what was going on? We had just beat the Nazis. We had won World War II. Everyone trusted the government. We built the suburbs in America. We went to the moon. We all watched the same 3 TV channels. Well, I wasn't born yet, but so I hear there were 3 TV channels. It was boring, but it was stable. The quote-unquote American dream is born and flourishes in this window. The industrial age is booming. Education is booming. The arts and sciences and music and Hollywood, it's just booming. It's a beautiful time. It's not without challenges, right? For certain, it's not without challenges. Ask anybody who was alive during those time and was growing up or was a young adult. It wasn't all rainbows and ponies. Of course not. It never is. But relatively speaking, the good old US of A was doing very, very well. We became literally the superpower on the planet during this era. So you could say this is the R-type. I love R-types because, I'm a mythology guy, but you could say this is kind of the prophet generation. These are the baby boomers. They're born in a time of wealth and safety. The new generations were doing better than prior generations, almost certainly. And then we shift. We move to the summer, the second turning. What's the vibe here? Rebellion, passion. Institutions are being attacked in the name of self-expression. The individual is not given enough. We're talking 1965-ish to 1984-ish. What happened? Those prophet kids, those boomers, they grew up. And they said, this order is suffocating. I want to find myself. Feminism is born. Free love and sex. The hippie drug culture. The awakening of individualism is flowering. And the result, a consciousness revolution. Hippies, Woodstock, the attacks on the traditional nuclear family, attacks on the state. We stopped trusting, quote unquote, the man, listened to the music and started trusting the self. The Vietnam War was blooming. Watergate. There's this mini rebellion happening against the status quo state. I mean, it was an era of individual awakening. Oh, and the civil rights movement, just another one. I almost forgot that one. How could I do that? And who's the archetype here? Coming into this era is the nomad generation. This is Gen X. Latchkey kids, they were often coined. They grew up while the nuclear family was beginning its slow decline. Still very strong, but the decline was happening. Dual income families were on the rise. Kids left at home, both parents working. Things were costing more, was one reason. So it needed dual incomes to feed the materialism. And then number two, the feminist revolution exploded the workplace to women in ways that were unheard of in prior generations. Gen X, how do we describe them in general? That's me, so I don't know, cynical, tough, independent. I need to stop here, though, just for a quick statement. Look, I get it. Making generalizations on people of various generations, which is never perfect. As we all know, anecdotally, people who don't fit the mold of their generation. Heck, maybe you are one of them listening right now and you're screaming, no way, that is not the way this generation is. I know people exactly the opposite. But at this point, humor me for a moment. We have to deploy this utilitarian concept of generalizations to bring this thing all together, knowing that maybe you might be listening and it may not fit your world exactly perfect like a glove, right? Okay. You know, I totally get that. But follow along here as we move to the third turning, the unraveling. Now we're in the fall. What's the vibe here? From 1985 to 2008-ish, late 90s, early 2000s, the vibe, I would say, cynicism, fragmentation. Institutions not only are not trusted, they are weakened. Individualism has at this point hit its peak. It's the party on the Titanic moment. Wall Street is booming. The tech revolution is booming. But the culture formed in the spring is rotting. And the signs are not just little bit now. They're more pronounced. We're starting to lose any shared values. Have over 300 million people in the United States living in the same zip code because technology has united us, but we're probably more separated than ever. The go-go 90s, early 2000s, just mind-altering, culture-altering technology booms. And into this world, the hero generation is born. This is the millennials. That'd be the archetype here that we're talking about. They're raised in a chaotic and unraveling world. They are overprotected. The term the helicopter parents arise, which to a Gen X child would have been the most bizarre thing they ever would have heard of, because the world feels unsafe. Our helicopter parents overprotecting. And ironically, that protecting them from all the evils, hindsight always 2020, one of the worst things that ever could have happened. This particular generation, anxiety, depression. Millennials gain the dubious distinction of being the most medicated generation, Xanax, Zoloft, the whole kitchen sink of antidepressant drugs to deal every kind of issue imaginable. And that leads us, my friends, to the fourth turning, the crisis. We are now in the winter. 2008 to our present day. The vibe, destruction, fear, anxiety. The bill comes due. What happened? The unraveling just hits a wall. The systems that we built in the spring, Social Security, Pax Romana, financial system, Pax Americana, Pax Romana. Sorry, that would have been the Roman Empire. The financial system, they all stopped working. Our national debt, over $37 trillion, completely and utterly unsustainable, that no politician will touch. Unimaginable number. And when the US dollar crashes, like really crashes, it's hard to even fathom the what next for the global financial markets. I mean, the reality, we are currently deep into the fourth turning. This is why politics is polarized. The current pool of politicians are not only ideological zealots, they are intellectual midgets. Trust in politicians in both parties, by the way, range from 15% to single digits, depending on the day and the poll. It's one of the main reasons institutions are collapsing. Trust in the judiciary, gone. We have stories, documentation of billionaires raping and molesting children that are not going to be prosecuted. While a burglar could break into your house today, slip and fall and sue you for personal injury, the job market, inflation, healthcare costs, taxation, education costs, just basic common human decency of citizen to citizen, almost non-existent. This is why the global order is falling apart. It was actually a beautiful, flowering global order for a while. Shame it all has to end, but the fourth turning will destroy the old order. It's going to burn the dead wood of the forest so that the new spring can start over again. If you can survive it. It may be great and grand and wonderful if you're young enough and see us flower again. Or, here's the other option that we get to in Plato and the Republic. Could also be a cycle that leads to tyranny. We don't know what we're going to get yet. Like I said, there's civilizations. The Chinese civilization is over 1,000 years old before communist China took over. It went through so many turnings. And if you read the Chinese history or the Roman history or the Greek history, it doesn't all cleanly pass always and ended the civilization completely. So always keep that in mind, that yes, we are in a fourth turning. We just don't know what's we don't know what the old order and how it's going to destroy or when it's going to get destroyed. But what does that mean for you? If you feel like the world's crazy, it's because we are in this climax of the movie. You are not crazy. You are not just overly anxious. And no, just because you hear and often believe some of these conspiracy theories doesn't mean you've lost your mind. Socrates was right. In our world, United States of America, hard times, the Depression, World War II, created very strong men, the GI generation. These very strong men created good times, roughly those 50s, 60s highs. The good times over time create weak men. We start to see the unraveling. And now, weak men will ultimately create very hard times. We are living through the fourth turning. The question isn't how do we stop it? You cannot stop winter from coming, no matter how hard you try. You may not want those cold blasts. You're going to get them one way or another. So the question isn't How do we stop it? The question is, do you have a code? Okay. So I think that gives you a modern contextual framework of Plato. But I would be remiss, since we are reading the Republic, that we don't go back to it. So Socrates discussed those 4 stages as well, and let's break them down. His stage 1 is called the Timocrat, or the Spartan. First stage, the perfect city slips. The ruler stops caring about wisdom and starts caring about honor and victory. Notice the shift. A ruler that cared about wisdom versus honor and victory. Honor and victory, very individualistic. Democracy. Think of Sparta. Remember the Spartan warrior? Think of the hyper-competitive, aggressive, alpha male culture. These men were tough. They were obsessed with war. They value strength, honor, code above intellect. But something happened as their conquest became more and more, and their fame and glory rises. These ultra alpha male warriors, they all have sort of this secret vice: gold. And they started pilfering little bits here and there from victories, or hiding that gold in dark basements. They start loving money in secret. Outwardly, they're stoic, they're tough, they're warriors, but inwardly, they're becoming greedy. And that moves us to the oligarch stage in Plato's lingo. So then the Timocrat has a son, and this son sees his father get treated poorly by the state. Maybe he gets canceled. Maybe he loses a court case because he's too rigid. I don't know. So the son says, forget this whole honor code. Geez, my dad suffers from that. That's ridiculous anyway. Honor doesn't pay the bills. I want the money. And then we start to see en masse these sons of their prior generation. They become the oligarchs. This is the rule of the rich. This class, they're thrifty, they're stingy. They're still working hard. Outwardly, it's still a strong civilization, but boy, do they like their wealth, and they start to hoard it. And they begin to backseat things like reason and intellect and wisdom, and they front seat greed. And here's the fatal flaw of the oligarchy, and it's one of the worst outcomes. By hoarding money, as Plato says through Socrates, you develop 2 cities in one. You have the city of the rich and the city of the poor. Sound familiar? 4 decades, Democrat or Republican president or Congress, makes 0 difference. The chasm between the ultra wealthy and the rest of us has been growing unabated for decades and decades. But back to the ancient times. So these oligarchs create what Socrates calls drones. Not drones flying over your head delivering Amazon boxes, but drones, to Socrates, a very derogatory term. Socrates kind of, how would he describe the drones? He even literally called them like a stinging insect. He went all the way to the bottom, like a criminal or a beggar. They sit in the hive and they eat the honey without working. They leech off of the wealth of others. And eventually the drones look at the rich, these getting soft oligarchs who are too busy counting money to train for war, and they say, these men are ours for the taking. They're fat, they're weak, they're lazy. Let's take them. And the drones revolt. Enter stage 3 in the Plato analogy, the democratic man. Democracy comes in stage 3. So the drones succeed and they kill or maim or disenfranchise the rich. They redistribute the wealth. They grant, quote unquote, freedom to everyone. Now pause. Sounds great, right? On the one hand, got our anarchists who probably love the thought of that, right? We love democracy. We're raised to worship it. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to carry a weapon. Freedom, freedom, freedom. I mean, it's ingrained in our psyche, right, in the United States. But listen to how Socrates describes the soul of the democratic man. The democratic man is the son of a stingy oligarch. He grows up rich, bored, and spoiled. He tastes the honey of the drone, and he decides, I don't want to be stingy like my dad. I want to have fun. Socrates describes him as a man with no hierarchy. The democratic man or woman is someone with no hierarchy. He treats all desires as equal. The democratic man, someday he might want to be a bodybuilder. Another day he might be a drunk. The next day he might pretend he's a philosopher. And the next day he's going to be a CEO, tech titan, businessman. He has no constitution inside him. He just has a supermarket of various desires and follows those desires in whichever direction they might lead. Food, sex, drugs, parties, cars, fancy jobs, fancy titles, power, influence, or fame, who knows, whatever it is. No grounding hierarchy. Society moves, heaves, and goes wherever the passions and the wind blow. Inside the book itself, it says this, quote, he lives from day to day, indulging the appetite of the hour, sometimes drinking the juice of the grape. Then he drinks only water and diets. Then he takes a turn at gymnastics, and then he occupies himself with philosophy. His life has neither law nor order, and this distracted existence he terms joy and bliss and freedom, end quote. Wow. I love those lines. It's just one of those moments where he said it 2,400 years ago, but man, he nailed what's going on right here, right now. This is the Instagram brain. This is the TikTok soul. We are the democratic man. We want to be a monk on Monday, a CEO on Tuesday, a party animal on Friday. We can be whatever we want to be whenever we want to be it. We have filters for everything. We have backgrounds to say we're somewhere else when we're not. We have freedom of choice, but we have no idea what to choose because we have no standard of good. We are the man of the multicolored cloak. We look beautiful because we are a kaleidoscope of everything, but inside, we're nothing. We're just a collection of raw appetite. Now, you may say, but wait 1 second. Surely, freedom is good, right? How can you say freedom to choose is not good? And Socrates says, the excessive increase of anything often causes a reaction in the opposite direction. When you love liberty too much, eventually you define liberty as freedom from authority, freedom from anything. And this is where society commits suicide. Socrates predicts the death of authority with absolute precision. Fathers fear their sons. Parents stop disciplining their kids because they want to be cool and be their friends. Teachers fear their students. Teachers flatter the students to avoid being hated or getting fired. My goodness, can we talk just between you and I for 1 second? Grade inflation and passing kids through classes is a cancer across education institutions, from high schools to colleges. My goodness, you will see a high school class of 100 kids with 85 of them on the honor roll. Really, really, am I to believe that 85% out of 100 kids are all superior students and only 15 of them are just average or below average? Come on. Or are we just handing out A's like candy? Heck, employers, and I talk to them, they don't trust, they don't care what GPA a student has. They know it's all BS. Another one, the young despise the old. The youth cancel the elders for being, quote unquote, out of touch or traditional. And again, there's always been a hint of this, always. And again, not all young, but when we lose care about the foundational principles or guidelines from the past, it becomes easier and easier to not care about the old. The premium modern societies put on youth is insane. Heck, older people trying to keep up are having surgery, shooting themselves up with all kinds of injections to quote unquote be young so they don't look too quote unquote old. Scary. Citizens despise the law. In this end stage, everyone ignores laws because nobody can tell them what to do. Hate to mention it again, but a society that cannot agree that when a person traffics, rapes, abuses, or even murders children for their playtime because they belong to the billionaire and political class is a society on the verge of collapse. It gets so bad, Socrates says, that even the animals become arrogant. This is kind of a hilarious quote. I had to put this in from the book. Socrates says, quote, "The horses and the asses have a way of marching along with all the rights and dignities of free men, and they will run at anybody who comes in their way if he does not leave the road clear of them, and all things are just ready to burst with liberty," end quote. Does that sound familiar? We have seen, and I hate to say it, illegal immigrants who broke the law to come here head to the street waving their country's natives' flags, screaming how horrible the United States of America is after they chose to leave their country and break the rules and come here illegally. What even is that? What even is that? Or when a teacher is afraid of the student because the institution won't support them. When the politician is afraid of doing the right thing because they may lose a key donor. When the parent is afraid of the child, you are in late stage democracy. And what's the result? Exhaustion. The chaos becomes too much. The crime, the noise, the lack of order. The people get tired of the noise. They get tired of the anxiety. Have you ever been home recently, just wanting a quiet evening, and boom, new riot here. President said this there. War over here. I mean, really, people, myself included, often just want to say, enough already. Just leave me alone. In the end of this stage, Socrates says people are just scared and they're tired of all the drama and they start looking for something that is not good. They start looking for a protector. They look for a strong man. They say, we don't care about the laws anymore. Just clean up the streets, fix the mess, save us. And that is how a tyrant is born. Tyranny does not arise from dictatorship. Tyranny arises from democracy as it has rotted and collapsed from the inside. Venezuela is a perfect example of this. They had a thriving democracy. It got more and more and more corrupt. It got so corrupt to the point that this guy, Hugo Chavez, runs to be president even after he was in jail. He doesn't win the first time. He runs again. He takes power, and voila, eventually we have a dictatorship. It did not rise from a socialist. It did not arise from a tyranny. It didn't arise from a dictator. Tyranny came from democracy, period. The excesses of liberty, when they begin to collapse, lead directly to the excesses of a type of slavery. So here's the warning of Book 8. We like to think we're safe because we have institutions. But Plato tells us that institutions are just shadows of our own souls. And if the soul of the citizen is rotten, the state will rot. If you're a timocrat and you're obsessed with status or power or money, you're going to build a war state. If you're an oligarch obsessed with money, you're going to build a class war. And if you're a Democrat meaning believing in democracy, not a Democrat, Team Blue Democrat, you become obsessed with pleasure and individualism and freedom, and you will build a chaos state. And if we stay in a chaos state too long, there will be a wolf. Maybe one's waiting in the wings right now, or maybe one's yet to be born. But there will be a wolf at the door. And next week in Book 9, we're going to meet that wolf face to face, as Plato would describe how these wolves come about. We're going to profile 2,400 years ago through Plato, and we'll match it up to what's going on in the modern world today, the psychology of a tyrant, so you and I can be on the lookout for it when we see it and hopefully deflect it. But we're going to see what happens when a human being has zero internal resistance, when the monster takes the wheel completely. I hope you will tune in and as we speed towards the grand finale of our series. I'm Dr. David Hopkins, and I'll see you in the next episode.